Wondering, hey, why do you Yanks not pronounce the H in herbs? Well, I suppose we could ask you, do you pronounce the H in honest, honor, hour, air? Well, then why do you pronounce the H in herb? These are all loan words from French, and the French basically never pronounce H's when it comes in the beginning position of a word, or at the end, or various other places. French is full of silent letters, which I suspect they set as traps so that they can feel snooty when us lesser peoples of the world are so foolish as to simply read all of the letters on the page like some kind of noob. I'm just kidding, French people. In fact, English is also full of all kinds of silent letters that trip people up all the time. But in part, this is because English is also full of French, particularly culinary English, right? Restaurant, dinner, soup, salad, sauté, fillet, or fillet, as you Brits would say, because you anglicized fillet just like you anglicized herb by pronouncing the H, herb. According to some estimates, nearly a third of English vocabulary comes from French, though there is apparently some scholarly debate around the finer details there. Take my earlier example of soup. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, among other sources, soup does indeed come from French, but before that, it comes from Latin, as most French does as a Romance language. On the other hand, not all of the Romantic influence in English should be attributed to the French, right? I mean, the Romans themselves conquered what we now call England more than 1,000 years before French-speaking Normans did. That's on the other hand. On the mutant third hand, the people who first started speaking what we now call English did not live in England at the time of Roman Britannia. The Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes were still migrating around Central and Northern Europe back then. They and other Germanic peoples were, of course, having their own rich cultural exchanges with the Romans. And indeed, OED acknowledges the word soup may have actually originated with Germanic peoples who passed it on to the Romans, who passed it on to the French, who passed it on to the English, who were themselves a Germanic people, arguably. Anyway, it gets messy when you drill down into the details, untangling who passed what word onto whom. Almost as messy as when you try to pass packages around the world. I should know. I had all kinds of exciting channel merch plans for the last year, and all that had to be put on hold because of logistical challenges. I should have considered the sponsor of today's video, ShipStation. ShipStation is the #1 shipping software for e-commerce. The field of etymology is filled with controversies and complications, but it's safe to say that a whole lot of English words came from French. This is one reason why English dictionaries tend to be really, really fat compared to something like Spanish dictionaries. We often have 2 or more words for the same thing in English because we've got a French word for it in English and an English word for it in English. A classic example of this is meat terminology. Pig is an English word. Pork is a French word. Cow is English. Beef is French. Sheep is English. Mutton is French. Are you noticing a pattern here? English is the language of the cold, filthy field. French is the language of the warm, inviting table. Now, look, I get annoyed by language policing as much as the next fella, but could you ask for more compelling evidence that language affects culture and vice versa? I mean, this whole idea that Frenchiness is fancy, this goes back all the way to the Norman conquest of England, like almost literally 1,000 years ago. A French-speaking elite came to rule over an English-speaking underclass. English speakers raised the pig, French speakers ate it. At least they ate the choice cuts. And this entire ancient class dynamic may have been completely forgotten by today had it not been baked into our language. The words that we choose to use to describe things have the power to perpetuate social attitudes, and this is hardly the most harmful or injurious example of that. But anyways, herbs. When one language absorbs a word from another, there is usually some degree of initial and ongoing adaptation. I might not pronounce the H in herbs, but I do pronounce the H in history, human, habit, hollandaise sauce. These are all words from France where they do not pronounce the initial H, and yet I do because language evolves. Loan words become cognates, 2 different words in 2 different languages that look and or sound similar because they have a recent common ancestor. Indeed, you might argue that herb isn't a loan word anymore. It's a cognate. The modern French spelling is Herbie, and it's pronounced herb or something like that. I don't know. Words do not magically stop evolving once they branch off into another language. They keep on evolving back over here in the native language or the donor language. They all keep moving and diverging away from each other, and that's how you end up with cognates. And this same divergence also occurs across different dialects of the same language, right? British English did not just stop evolving the moment that colonists peeled away and started developing their own American English dialects. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, you Brits said herb with a silent H right up until sometime in the 19th century. Only then did you start to adapt this loan word into your own pronunciation habits because gradually, that's what always happens, which is why I just said habit instead of habit. For whatever reason, we Americans just simply haven't gotten around to anglicizing herb yet. I'm gonna put it on the to-do list, I'm gonna send that memo out to everybody else, I'm gonna try to get it onto our master schedule, but until that moment, I'm still gonna keep saying herb instead of herb, even though some of you Brits like to try to tell me that herb is objectively wrong. This is an argument that I've gotten many times on the internet. People who like to say that British English is redundant. There is only proper English spoken in England and improper English spoken everywhere else, potentially including Scotland and Wales and Ireland, right? I mean, it's right there in the name, English, England. But just because a thing is named after a place doesn't mean that the people who currently live in that place own that thing, right? I mean, for example, this variety of basil is named after Italy. It's Italian basil, but it's my basil. I own this basil. Also, basil didn't even originate in Italy. It's native to tropical Africa and Asia. And where did English come from originally? It came from over here, Beowulf territory. Maybe we should defer to the Danes about what is or is not proper English. And you know, Brits, if you didn't want lots of other people speaking your language and changing it around, well then maybe you shouldn't have colonized half the world and forced the people there to adopt your language. I'm just saying. Anyway, herbs. What even are herbs? Well, in culinary English, which is influenced heavily by French, of course, herbs are soft, leafy plant parts with a super strong flavor. Such a strong flavor that you would generally not use them by themselves. You would use them to flavor other things. But in botanical terminology, herb has a much broader definition. An herb in botany is any flowering plant that does not grow some kind of woody stem. And by that definition, rosemary is actually not an herb because it gets a really thick woody stem, like a little tree trunk. That's in contrast to this banana, which is an herb. Botanically, herbaceous plants remain soft above ground, which often causes them to die back in winter, like this banana plant has. But they will grow green anew in the springtime, just as this banana plant will, I hope, producing leaves that are herbs in the botanical sense, but not in the culinary sense. Unless, of course, you're talking about one of the many cultures where they actually really value the taste, the flavor of banana leaves. But I think we've gone down enough tangents for one day, don't you? You go do something else. I'm going to water my herbs.
Okay, you guys aren't going to believe this. Remember what I said in my Intelligent Elephant video about Lord Rothschild? However, the reason why I'm not getting any love from the ladies is purely because the Rothschilds pay women to ignore my texts. But one day they will run out of money, and then it will be my time to shine. Well, if you've seen the news recently, he died last week, and I shit you not, just a few days ago I got a girlfriend. How unbelievable is that? Well, so unbelievable that it didn't actually happen. But it would be pretty cool if it did, no? Even still, I have mixed feelings about the news, as now anything bad that happens in my life will now be my fault instead of his. But anyways, back to the actual video. Hey, you look like you put on a couple of pounds, but don't worry. Post-pandemic, so did a lot of people. Well, Not actually. Not really, if you're serious about it anyway. And no, I'm not being body positive, that's what people in denial. I mean, you literally have not increased your mass to a size that obesity maxes like myself can respect. I only respect people that cause uneven wear to vehicle tires when they get in cars, or are so large that planning needs to be made around them whilst in sea-based vehicles. I'm talking about people who are obesity maxing. What is obesity maxing, you might ask? Well, you've come to the right person. In today's video, I'm going to show you techniques and lifestyles that can bring you to this glorious size, and also be going through the benefits of this lifestyle, as well as why someone would want to do this to themselves. Firstly, why would you want to obese max? Well, there are many health benefits that are associated with being grossly obese that big health won't tell you about. Did you know that clogged arteries are just a myth created by hospitals so they can charge you surgery to remove them? Do you seriously believe that a treatment called angioplasty exists? Or that they insert a tiny balloon into your arteries to widen them? Firstly, how would they even blow up the balloon once they got it in your vessels? Explain that one, liberals. Unless they had really small lips, I'm not buying it. Secondly, after they insert that so-called balloon, then they insert a fishnet tubing into the area that they supposedly remove the fat blockage. I'm no doctor, but I'm pretty sure that there aren't any fish in my bloodstream, so why would they be inserting fishnet tubing? The worst part is that during this so-called operation, they have you under anesthesia, so even if you wanted to watch them, you can't. So we're just supposed to take their word for it, and then they charge you 6 figures in medical debt? Yeah, that doesn't seem like a scam to me for sure. Once you get past the fact that being obese isn't bad for your health, you can see the health benefits it provides, like having a larger volume to surface area ratio, meaning you can get more stuff inside you while taking up less space. And as you become more circle-like, you'll become more spherical, allowing you to be rolled down hills and transported with minimal effort. It also creates a layer of insulation that allows you to be basically comfortable in any environment, and save money on your heating bills. Energy companies be damned. So how can you gain as much mass as possible, as quick as possible? Well, there are two factors that need to be accounted for when trying to increase fat mass. And that is calories burned and calories digested, not necessarily eaten. So whilst you can drink gallons of oil, if you end up throwing it up or it goes through you without digestion, then you just wasted your time. So you want to eat a blend of refined sugar with oil in order to maximize your caloric intake, whilst also allowing for the food to be digested in order to access those very valuable calories. To decrease your calories burned, you must submit to a sedentary lifestyle. You must reduce all activity to just the base processes necessary to keep you alive. So next time I tell a corny joke, don't even think about rolling your eyes if you're serious about this obese maxing lifestyle. Take for example an obesity maxing Hall of Famer, John Brewer Minnick, who at one point weighed around 650 kilograms, and despite this huge size, he claimed he lived a normal life. He had a body fat percentage of around 80%, which if you think about it, is pretty insane. Unfortunately, due to medical health propaganda at the time, he was coerced into a weight loss diet that led to him losing around 419.99 kilograms in just under 2 years. Which, although very tragic, he successfully regained 350 kilograms of that weight within the year, at one point gaining 100 kilograms in just 7 days. A true pioneer in his field, he unfortunately passed away at the age of 41 for reasons I didn't bother to look up. There is a secret that I can let you in on if you'd like to know how John gained that 100 kilograms in just 7 days. My team have created these chocolate bars, patent pending, that are so calorie dense that during early development in the 40s in Nagasaki, we accidentally set up a spark in a warehouse that contained boxes of them, and they caused an explosion so great that we had to use the cover of nuclear bombs just to keep the public from finding out. But don't worry, we managed to stabilize them since then. We don't actually know what we put in these, and because of how we operate, neither does the FDA, and by God they never will. All we know is that once you pick one up, you just can't seem to put them down for some reason. Not only are they not filling, allowing you to eat way more than you expect, but they're also super high calorie, which is perfect for obese maxers. And to add to that, 1% of all sales go towards fat activist group associations, saved it, which aim to tackle misinformation spread by governments about health at bigger sizes and the normal skinny propaganda that you see around. So yeah, if you guys want obese max, these are the basics, but make sure to try it out and let me know how you're finding it. Oh, and also make sure to try out the Stoic Bites bar. It's pretty good. Anyways, I've got a meeting to attend, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye. This recording is meant only for viewing by the board and trusted members of the Stoic Stick Association. Experiments on our patented Stoic Bites are working very well. The active ingredient Stoic Light reacts very aggressively with fat cells, creating a chemical we have dubbed stoicaine, which, when created in large quantities, associates the current